Marcus Steele had seen a lot of desperate ships limp into his repair station over the years, but the vessel currently blocking his main docking bay looked like it had been through a war, lost badly, and then used as target practice by whoever won. Hull plates hung at angles that defied both physics and good sense, the engine cowling was held together with what appeared to be industrial tape and optimism, and the entire starboard side bore scorch marks that suggested either a really bad landing or a really good firefight. "Another satisfied customer," he muttered, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that had given up being cleaned sometime during the previous decade. The pilot emerged from the battered craft with movements that were careful, controlled, and probably painful. A heavy hood obscured most of her features, but Marcus could see enough to note that she was human, female, and currently doing an excellent impression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. "You the mechanic?" she asked, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't quite place but found oddly musical. "Depends who's asking and whether they can pay." Marcus gestured toward the wreckage she'd arrived in. "Though judging by your ship's condition, I'm guessing you're not here for a routine maintenance check. Can you fix it?" "Lady, I can fix anything that moves, floats, flies, or occasionally explodes. The question is whether it's worth fixing." He walked around her vessel, cataloging the damage with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent 30 years making hopeless causes space-worthy again. "This thing's held together by prayer and stubbornness." "What happened to it?" "Bad luck." "Bad luck doesn't usually come with laser burns and impact craters." She shifted uncomfortably, pulling her hood lower. "How much?" Marcus paused his inspection to study her more carefully. The way she stood suggested military training, but her clothes were civilian and expensive despite showing recent wear. Her hands, visible at the edges of her sleeves, looked too soft for manual labor but showed the kind of precise calluses that came from handling advanced equipment. "Depends what you want me to do. I can patch the worst holes and get your engines running well enough to reach the next system, or I can strip this thing down and rebuild it properly." "How long for a complete rebuild?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. "But that's assuming I can source parts for whatever exotic modifications you've got running through this thing." He tapped a section of hull that hummed with energy patterns he didn't recognize. "This isn't standard Federation engineering." "Will that be a problem?" "Not for me. I've worked on everything from Centauri pleasure craft to Proximan cargo haulers. Technology's technology, even when it's trying to be mysterious." Marcus quoted her a price that was fair without being charitable. "Half up front, half when you're ready to leave." She produced a credit chip without hesitation, which told him 2 important things: she had money, and she was used to paying without negotiating. Both facts suggested she was either very successful at whatever she did or very eager to avoid attention. "I'll need somewhere to stay while you work. There's a boarding house in town, about 20 minutes by ground transport. Clean beds, decent food, and they don't ask questions about where their customers come from. I'd prefer to stay here." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Here's a repair shop, not a hotel. I'll pay extra." The way she said it carried undertones of desperation that she was trying hard to conceal. Marcus had heard that tone before, usually from people who were running from something and didn't have anywhere safe to run to. "There's a small apartment above the main workshop," he said finally. "Nothing fancy, but it's clean and private. You can use it as long as you don't interfere with my work schedule." "Thank you." She transferred additional credits, enough to cover the accommodation and several meals besides. Marcus accepted the payment but found himself studying her with growing curiosity. "You got a name?" "Zara." "Just Zara?" "It's enough." Marcus shrugged. In his line of work, single names were as common as multiple identities and fictional backgrounds. "All right, Zara. I'm Marcus. I'll start on your ship tomorrow morning. Tonight, you should get some rest. You look like you haven't slept properly in weeks." "I haven't." After she'd settled into the apartment, Marcus spent the evening examining her ship more closely. What he found made him increasingly puzzled. The damage was extensive but somehow selective, as if someone had known exactly which systems to target for maximum inconvenience without actually destroying the vessel. The modifications he'd noticed weren't just exotic, they were decades ahead of anything he'd seen, using principles that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The next morning, he found Zara sitting in his workshop's observation area, watching him work with an intensity that was both flattering and slightly unnerving. "You're up early," he said, beginning his diagnostic routine. "I don't sleep much." "Nightmares?" "Something like that." Marcus activated his scanner array and immediately got readings that made him double-check his equipment. The ship's power distribution network was unlike anything in the standard databases, routing energy through crystalline matrices that shouldn't have been able to handle those load levels. "Zara, where exactly did you get this ship? Does it matter?" "It matters if I'm going to fix it without accidentally triggering some kind of exotic matter explosion." He showed her the scanner results. "These power conduits are running on principles I've never seen before. Beautiful engineering, but completely outside normal parameters." She was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. "Then, it belonged to my family. The modifications are traditional." "Traditional for who?" "People who value discretion over convention." Marcus grinned. "Lady, I spent 15 years fixing ships for people who valued discretion over convention. Smugglers, rebels, refugees, and the occasional spy with more money than sense. Your family must have some very interesting traditions." "You could say that." He began the careful process of mapping her ship's systems, taking detailed notes on every component and connection. The work was challenging in ways that made his engineering instincts sing with excitement. Whoever had designed this vessel understood technology at a level that bordered on artistry. "Marcus," Zara said after several hours of comfortable silence, "why do you do this?" "Fix broken things for strangers." He paused, considering the question. "Because everything deserves a chance to work properly. Ships, people, situations that seem hopeless, there's usually a way to make them better if you're willing to put in the effort. Even when the cost exceeds the value. Value's not always about money. Sometimes it's about giving someone the chance to keep moving when they're out of options." She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't read, something between gratitude and sadness that made him want to ask questions he suspected she wouldn't answer. "Your family's lucky to have someone who thinks like that working on their ship," she said softly. "And you're lucky to have family who care enough to give you something this sophisticated to travel in, even if they can't protect you from whatever put those laser burns on the hull." Zara's hands tightened slightly in her lap, but her voice remained steady. "Yes. I'm very lucky." Marcus returned to his work, but he found himself glancing occasionally at his mysterious customer, wondering what kind of family traditions produced technology this advanced, and what kind of bad luck required someone to run so far from home that they ended up in his workshop on the edge of nowhere, paying premium rates to stay invisible. 3 days into the repair project, Marcus had reached 2 conclusions. First, Zara's ship contained technology that belonged in a museum of impossible engineering, and second, Zara herself was possibly the worst liar he'd ever met. Her explanations for the various exotic systems became more creative each day, ranging from, "My cousin's a really good engineer," to, "We bought upgrades from traders in the Outer Rim," to his personal favorite, "It came that way." "Zara," he said, holding up a component that hummed with internal energy and seemed to bend light around its edges, "this is a quantum flux regulator. They don't exist outside of theoretical physics papers and very classified military research. Maybe it's a replica. A replica that works better than the theoretical original. We got a really good deal." Marcus set down the component and looked at her with the patient expression he usually reserved for customers who insisted their ship's problems were caused by space gremlins. "And this?" He gestured toward a panel covered in symbols that definitely weren't from any human alphabet. "Let me guess, decorative upgrades. Cultural artistic expression. The culture being very artistic." He couldn't help but laugh. You know, most people who are running from something illegal at least come up with plausible cover stories. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of what might have been panic before she regained control. I'm not running from anything illegal. I didn't say illegal. I said something. Marcus returned his attention to the quantum regulator, testing its connections with equipment that was probably inadequate for the task. Look, Zara, I don't care what you're running from. Could be debt collectors, ex-boyfriends, or intergalactic tax auditors for all it matters to me. But if I'm going to fix this ship properly, I need to understand what I'm working with. And if you can't understand it, then I learn. That's what makes this job interesting. Over the following days, their routine developed naturally. Marcus worked on increasingly complex repairs while Zara watched from her observation post, occasionally offering insights that revealed far more technical knowledge than her cover story could explain. Her questions about his methods were surprisingly sophisticated, focusing on principles rather than procedures. Why did you bypass the primary coupling instead of replacing it? She asked during his work on the engine assembly. Because the primary coupling isn't actually broken. It's been programmed to malfunction. Marcus showed her the diagnostic readings. Someone's been sabotaging your ship, but they're being subtle about it. Making it fail gradually rather than catastrophically. That's not possible. It's not only possible, it's elegant. Whoever did this knows your systems better than you do. He traced the sabotage routines through the ship's computer network. They've been causing cascading failures designed to strand you without killing you. Question is, why would someone want to keep you alive but immobilized? Zara was very quiet for a very long time. Maybe they want something from me. Must be something pretty valuable if they're willing to go to this much trouble. Perhaps. Marcus spent the afternoon unraveling the sabotage programs, a process that required him to understand the ship's architecture at a level that revealed just how extraordinary the technology really was. The quantum processing cores alone represented advances that humanity wouldn't achieve for decades, and the energy distribution system operated on principles that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Zara, he said finally, I need to ask you something, and I'd appreciate an honest answer. She tensed. What? Are you from around here? And by around here, I mean this galaxy. What kind of question is that? The kind that comes from working on technology that shouldn't exist, built using materials I can't identify, operating on principles that make my equipment look like stone knives and bearskins. Marcus gestured toward the quantum cores. This isn't human engineering. It's not Centauri, Proximan, or anything else I've encountered in 30 years of fixing alien technology. Maybe you haven't encountered everything the galaxy has to offer. Maybe not. But I've encountered enough to recognize when something is completely outside normal parameters. He turned to face her directly. Zara, what are you? I'm someone who needs her ship fixed. That's not what I asked. She stood abruptly, moving to the workshop's main viewport where she could look out at the stars. Marcus, some questions are dangerous to answer. Dangerous for who? For everyone. He joined her at the viewport, noting the way she held herself, like someone accustomed to being watched, evaluated, potentially threatened. You know what I think? I think you're nobility. Real nobility, not the corporate aristocracy kind. You've got the bearing, the education, the kind of unconscious confidence that comes from being born important. And what makes you think that? The way you stand, the way you speak when you forget to disguise your accent, the way you assume that paying extra will solve any problem. Marcus smiled. Also, the fact that your ship is basically a technological marvel disguised as a piece of junk. That's exactly the kind of thing someone would do if they were trying to travel incognito while maintaining the ability to outrun or outfight anything that came after them. Zara's reflection in the viewport showed an expression of resignation mixed with something that might have been relief. You're very perceptive. It's an occupational hazard. So, princess, what are you running from? I never said I was a princess. You didn't deny it either. She sighed, a sound that carried the weight of decisions made in impossible circumstances. An arranged marriage. To someone who would use our union to claim power that isn't rightfully his. And your family supports this arrangement? My family is complicated. They believe duty should supersede personal preference. And you disagree. I believe that choosing who to spend your life with shouldn't be a political decision made by other people. She turned away from the viewport. But my preferences may not matter if I can't stay ahead of the people trying to drag me back. Marcus studied her profile, noting details he'd missed before. The elegant bone structure, the unconscious grace of movement, the way she observed everything around her as if constantly assessing potential threats or advantages. Well, princess, you picked a good place to run to. Nobody looks for missing royalty in a repair shop at the edge of nowhere. Princess is not my title. What should I call you then? Zara is fine. All right, Zara. But I'm keeping the rest of my assessment. You're definitely running from an arranged marriage, definitely have more money than most people see in a lifetime, and definitely own technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization if anyone knew it existed. And does that change anything? Marcus returned to his work on her ship, connecting tools to systems that probably cost more than his entire facility. It changes the fact that I'm going to do the best repair job of my career, because someone with your resources deserves equipment that actually works properly. That's all. That's all. Your personal life is your business, Your Highness. My business is making sure your ship can take you wherever you need to go when you're ready to leave. For the first time since she'd arrived, Zara smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face and made Marcus understand why someone might be willing to start a war to possess her. Thank you, Marcus. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see what this thing can do when I'm finished with it. Marcus was deep in a meditative trance of complex repair work when the proximity alarm started screaming. He dropped his plasma torch and checked his sensors, immediately regretting every life choice that had led to this moment. 5 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of his system, and their configuration screamed military precision despite their civilian registry codes. Zara, he called toward the apartment. She appeared at the workshop entrance within seconds, already dressed and moving with the kind of controlled urgency that suggested she'd been expecting this moment. How many? 5 ships. Professional-grade equipment. They're running sensor sweeps but haven't approached yet. They're making sure I'm here before committing to boarding action. Zara moved to his sensor console, her fingers dancing over controls with familiarity that confirmed every suspicion he'd developed about her technical knowledge. They'll wait for confirmation, then move fast. Who exactly are they? People who believe I belong to them. Marcus began activating his workshop's defensive systems, such as they were. Zara, I need you to be more specific. Are we talking about debt collectors, law enforcement, or someone with military-grade firepower and a personal grudge? The third option. Wonderful. His shields powered up, designed to protect against asteroid impacts and solar flares rather than coordinated assault. And I'm guessing negotiation isn't an option. Not if you value your continued existence. The first ship moved into approach vector, its weapon systems powering up in a display that was meant to intimidate rather than destroy. Marcus recognized the tactic. They wanted Zara alive, which meant they'd try to disable rather than obliterate his station. Marcus, Zara said, her voice carrying an edge he hadn't heard before, you need to get to your emergency shuttle and leave. Now. Not happening. This isn't your fight. It became my fight when they showed up at my home with weapons-powered and threatening attitudes. Marcus began routing power from non-essential systems to his shield generators. Besides, I just spent a week fixing your ship. I'm not letting them blow up my best work. The lead ship opened a communication channel, and a voice that could have frozen supernovas filled the workshop. Attention repair facility. You are harboring stolen property belonging to the Kethril Consortium. Surrender the fugitive and your facility will be spared. Marcus keyed his response with the diplomatic skills of someone who'd spent 30 years dealing with difficult customers. This is a licensed repair facility operating under Federation commercial codes. I don't have any stolen property, and I don't negotiate with people who show up uninvited and start making threats. The woman calling herself Zara is a runaway bride. She belongs to Warlord Kethril by legal contract. Funny thing about legal contracts, Marcus replied, they generally require willing participants. Last I checked, slavery was illegal in Federation space. This is a lawful retrieval of contracted property. Interfere and you will be considered an enemy combatant. The communication ended, and Marcus turned to find Zara staring at him with an expression that mixed gratitude with horror. Marcus, you don't understand what you've just done. I've just told a bunch of thugs that I don't intimidate easily. He began powering up systems that hadn't been used in years, workshop equipment that could be repurposed for less peaceful applications. What I don't understand is why someone would go to this much trouble for a runaway bride, unless... Unless what? Unless the bride in question is worth more than just a marriage contract. Marcus's sensor display showed the ships moving into attack formation. Zara, exactly how much political power would your husband gain by marrying you? Enough to control my homeworld and launch expansion campaigns against neighboring systems. And your homeworld would be? Before she could answer, the first ship opened fire, targeting his shield generators with precision that spoke of detailed intelligence about his facility's layout. Marcus began implementing defensive measures that were creative, desperate, and probably suicidal. Zara, I need you to get to your ship and prepare for emergency departure. I'm not leaving you here to die for me. You're not leaving me here to die. You're leaving me here to buy you time while I demonstrate why people don't mess with my workshop. Marcus activated a feedback pulse through his shield network that sent one of the attacking ships spinning off course. Besides, I've got a few surprises these guys aren't expecting. The next few minutes became a chaotic ballet of improvised defense and coordinated assault. Marcus used every trick he'd learned from decades of dealing with hostile salvagers, pirates, and occasionally upset customers. His workshop's industrial equipment became weapons of opportunity, plasma cutters became directed energy guns, gravity manipulators became tractor beam disruptors, and his or processing systems became very effective at launching large objects at high velocity. But improvisation only went so far against professional military action. Marcus. Zara's voice carried over the sound of failing shield generators. My ship's ready, but the engines won't start. What do you mean they won't start? Someone's activated a remote shutdown protocol. Marcus abandoned his defensive position and sprinted toward Zara's ship, where diagnostic displays showed exactly what he'd feared. The sabotage programs he'd been removing had included a kill switch, activated by proximity to specific signature broadcasts. They're not just trying to capture you, he said, his hands flying over control interfaces. They're making sure you can't escape even if you get past them. Can you override it? Not quickly enough. Marcus made a decision that was either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. But I can do something else. He began rapidly connecting his workshop's main power grid directly to Zara's ship, bypassing the normal charging systems and feeding raw energy into her quantum cores. Alarms started screaming as power levels exceeded safe parameters. Marcus, what are you doing? Giving you enough power to break through their kill switch. He worked frantically, rerouting systems and overriding safety protocols. It's going to overload half your circuits, but it should give you 30 seconds of full power before everything shuts down. 30 seconds isn't enough to reach hyperspace. It's enough to reach the asteroid field. You can hide there until I finish removing their shutdown codes. And if you can't? Marcus looked up from his work to meet her eyes. Then you'll figure out another way. You're tougher than you think, princess. The power transfer completed just as his outer shields failed completely. Zara's ship hummed to life with energy patterns that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Marcus, she said urgently, there's something you need to know. Tell me after you're safely hidden in the asteroids. I'm not human. The words hit him like a physical force. What? I'm Etherean. My people have been watching human expansion for decades, but we've never made direct contact. I'm the first of my kind most humans have ever met. Marcus stared at her, processing this information while explosions from the ongoing battle shook the station around them. That explains the technology. It explains a lot of things. She moved toward her ship's boarding ramp. Marcus, if I don't make it back. You'll make it back. And when you do, we'll figure out what comes next. And if the galaxy finds out what I am? Then the galaxy learns that alien princesses make excellent customers and tip well for quality repair work. Despite everything happening around them, Zara smiled. You're remarkable, Marcus Steele. I'm a mechanic who's very good at fixing impossible things. Including situations that seem hopeless. She disappeared into her ship, and moments later, the vessel that had arrived as a piece of junk departed as a technological marvel, moving with grace and power that human engineering couldn't match. Marcus watched it vanish into the asteroid field, then returned to his defensive systems with renewed determination. If alien princesses were willing to trust him with their impossible problems, the least he could do was make sure they had a safe place to return to when they were ready to stop running. The next 12 hours tested every creative defense mechanism Marcus had ever devised and several he invented on the spot. Warlord Kethral's forces had settled into siege mode, systematically dismantling his station's defenses while broadcasting increasingly hostile demands for Zara's surrender. Marcus responded with engineering solutions that bordered on inspired insanity, turning his atmospheric processors into weapon systems, using gravity manipulators to hurl asteroids at approaching ships, and somehow converting his or refinery into a particle beam that could disable targeting systems at considerable range. This is your final warning, came the transmission from the lead ship. Surrender the Etherean princess or face total annihilation. Marcus paused his work on an improvised shield amplifier. Did you just say Etherean princess? Princess Zara of the Etherean Collective, heir to the Crystal Throne and bride-elect of Warlord Kethral by terms of the Expansion Accords. Marcus said, connecting power couplings with steady hands despite the explosions happening around him. That explains a lot. The communication channel stayed open, carrying Kethral's voice with the kind of casual menace that suggested he was accustomed to being obeyed without question. Human, you have no comprehension of what you interfere with. The princess represents the key to controlling the most advanced civilization in this galactic sector. And you represent everything that's wrong with arranged marriages, Marcus replied, successfully bringing his main defense grid back online. Also, your negotiation skills need work. Generally, when you want someone to cooperate, you don't start by blowing up their stuff. Return her, and you will be compensated for your inconvenience. Keep her, and you'll be compensated with a front-row seat to the heat death of the universe. Marcus cut the transmission and returned to his defensive preparations, trying not to think about the fact that he was single-handedly holding off a military assault by someone who apparently commanded enough firepower to threaten entire star systems. His workshop's modifications were holding, but barely, and he was running out of creative applications for industrial equipment. That was when Zara's ship emerged from the asteroid field, moving with predatory grace that made Marcus's breath catch. But this wasn't the damaged vessel that had limped into his station a week ago. The ship had somehow transformed, hull plates shifting to reveal weapon systems that belonged in military nightmares, and the entire craft now hummed with energy patterns that made his instruments scream warnings about exotic matter containment. Marcus, Zara's voice came through the communication system, but now he could hear harmonics in it that definitely weren't human. I'm sorry I lied to you. Which part? All of it. Except the part about needing my ship fixed. What followed was less a battle and more a demonstration of why the Etherean Collective had remained hidden from galactic politics. Zara's ship moved through Kethral's assault formation like it was dancing, weapon systems that operated on principles Marcus couldn't even guess at, reducing military-grade vessels to drifting debris with surgical precision. Within minutes, only Kethral's flagship remained, its weapons powered down and its crew probably reconsidering their career choices. Warlord Kethral, Zara's voice carried across all communication frequencies, and now Marcus could hear the authority that came from generations of royal breeding. By the ancient laws of the Etherian Collective, I formally dissolve any contracts made without my consent and declare you an enemy of the Crystal Throne. You cannot dissolve a legal marriage contract. I can when the contract was negotiated by traitors in my own court who sold my freedom for promises of power they will never receive. Her ship moved to position itself between Marcus's station and the remaining hostile vessel. You have 30 seconds to depart this system. If you return, I will demonstrate why my ancestors conquered 17 star systems before deciding that warfare was beneath our dignity. Kethral's flagship departed with the kind of speed that suggested its crew had suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere in the galaxy. An hour later, Marcus stood in his workshop trying to process everything that had happened. Zara's ship had docked again, but now she emerged without the hood, revealing features that were undeniably beautiful and definitely not entirely human. Her skin held an inner luminescence that shifted with her emotions, and when she moved, she seemed to float rather than walk. But most striking were the crystalline markings that traced elegant patterns along her temples and the gracefully pointed ears that caught light like living jewels. So, Marcus said, setting down his tools and trying to sound casual, alien princess. That's new. Are you afraid of me? Should I be? My people could destroy human civilization without much effort. Marcus considered this while surveying the damage to his station. Your people could probably also fix human civilization without much effort. Technology like yours could solve most of our resource and energy problems. That's not the response I expected. What did you expect? Fear. Demands for technology or territory. Attempts to use me as leverage against my people. Zara moved closer, her luminescent skin shifting to softer hues. That's what Kethral planned. Marry me, gain access to Etherian technology, and use it to build an empire that could threaten half the galaxy. And instead you got a mechanic who jury-rigs mining equipment into defensive weapons and argues with warlords over communication channels. Yes. Disappointing. The opposite. She reached out, her fingers brushing his hand with touch that was warm and somehow electric. Marcus, in the past week, you've treated me with more genuine respect and kindness than I received in years of court life. You saw me as a person worth helping rather than a prize worth claiming. Because that's what you are. A person. The alien princess thing is interesting, but it doesn't change the fundamentals. It changes everything. I'm heir to a civilization that has remained hidden for centuries, possessor of technology that could reshape galactic politics, and now that Kethral knows what I am, that secret won't remain secret much longer. Marcus nodded, understanding the implications. So what happens now? Now I have to return home and face the consequences of my choices. The Crystal Throne needs an heir who can navigate the politics of first contact with humanity, and I need to ensure that people like Kethral can never again threaten my people or yours. That sounds like a big job. It is. Too big for one person. She paused, her luminescence shifting to patterns he was beginning to recognize as nervousness. Marcus, how would you feel about becoming the first human ambassador to the Etherian Collective? He stared at her. I'm a mechanic. You're a problem solver who approaches impossible situations with creativity and determination. You've already demonstrated the ability to work with Etherian technology and to treat my people with respect rather than exploitation. Her smile was radiant enough to power his entire station. Besides, someone needs to maintain the diplomatic facilities, and I trust your repair work. Marcus looked around his workshop, then at his damaged but still functional station, then at the alien princess who'd brought adventure, chaos, and possibilities he'd never imagined into his quiet life at the edge of space. Would this ambassadorial position come with a decent workshop? The finest engineering facilities in the galaxy. And challenging repair projects? Technology that will make your current work look like children's toys. And the chance to keep fixing impossible things. Including, if you're willing, the relationship between two civilizations that are about to meet for the first time in recorded history. Marcus grinned, already imagining the technical manuals he'd need to write for human engineers trying to understand Etherean quantum mechanics. Your Highness, that sounds like exactly the kind of impossible job I've been preparing for my entire career. Is that a yes? That's a yes. But I have one condition. Name it. When we're working together, you call me Marcus, not Ambassador Steele or Your Excellency or whatever formal title comes with the job. And what should I call you when we're not working together? Well, Marcus said, moving closer to her, drawn by the warmth of her luminescence and the way her eyes held depths like captured starlight, I was thinking you could probably just call me yours. Zara's laughter was like music that resonated in harmonics beyond human hearing, and when she kissed him, Marcus finally understood why some problems were worth fixing regardless of the complications they created. 6 months later, standing in the crystal spires of the Etherean capital, Marcus watched human and alien engineers work together on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. His workshop had become a cultural exchange center where the art of fixing broken things had evolved into the science of building better tomorrows. Any regrets? Zara asked, joining him at the observation platform that overlooked their shared future. Only one. I should have charged you more for that first repair job. I had no idea I was fixing the ship of the most important woman in the galaxy. Marcus, she said, her crystalline markings shifting to patterns he now recognized as deep affection, you didn't fix my ship. You fixed me. Same difference. I specialize in making impossible things work properly. And as he held the alien princess who trusted a human mechanic with her heart, her secrets, and her civilization's future, Marcus Steele couldn't help but think that this was definitely his best repair job ever.